India has just test-fired its first ever hypersonic missile. Now, a hypersonic missile is a weapon traveling at speeds of over Mach 5. That's 5 times the speed of sound. This weapon will allow India to target warships and enemy positions from over 1,500 kilometers away. The recent test was in fact yet another missile milestone for India this year. There have been a series of missile tests. First, of the long-range land attack cruise missile, the extended range Pinaka rocket, and of course the air-launched Brahmos missile. Now, these are huge achievements for our tactical deterrence capability, the ability to deter an adversary from launching a surprise attack. Now, prototypes of the kind that we've tested are huge milestones, but until these prototypes enter mass production and are inducted into the services in large numbers, they are meaningless for India's national security. So today, I want to talk about another lesser known aspect of the next steps in the missile journey. What does it take to actually convert these prototypes into production? The hard facts confronting India's military-industrial complex. And I have with me two gentlemen who've been part of India's defense industrial complex for decades. Joining me now on the News9 Plus Show are Air Vice Marshal PK Srivastava, who was with Bharat Dynamics Limited, Rahul Chaudhary, former CEO Tata Power SED, and in the studio I have with me my colleague Deepak Bhadana. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus Show. Air Vice Marshal Srivastava, firstly, as a defense expert, give us the importance of a hypersonic missile. Why is a hypersonic missile such a game changer, and why is literally every country with a military of significance in the world today going after hypersonic missiles?
I guess the question is probably why we are so hyper about the hypersonic missile.
Absolutely hyper. What's the hype about hypersonics?
Okay.
Yes.
So taking it from there, I would just say the hypersonic missile is one missile which can penetrate through the various layers of air defense network of the adversary.
Right.
So your basic idea is when you launch any kinds of missile,
Yes.
the adversary also has mapped your missile systems,
Right.
and accordingly they have radars, satellite imagery, and all kinds of methods and procedures with them
Yes.
to engage these missiles.
Right.
Now, two things come in play. One is that these are re-entry missiles. They
Yes.
go outside in the space and then come back, and they come back at such a high speed that and the kind of signature which they produce for the radar is hardly any for any air defense network to engage it and detect it and engage it. So, and the speeds make it so impossible. The servo, we always go by the tempo of the war. The tempo of the whole engagement cycle becomes so small, it's impossible, nearly impossible for the enemy to engage it.
Right.
But they are naturally, the other side is they are costlier versions of the
Yes.
missiles. So they are used very, very selectively for targets which are very significant, and you need accurate assessment or accurate destruction of the target.
Yes.
The hypersonic missile takes you in a different dimension of missile defense or offense. So I would say it's a great achievement for a country like ours. And we are really, you can say, on a path, on a trajectory, which we must have the kind of scenario which is around us developing, and more so it will happen as we walk into the next decade.
Yes.
And this decade, of course, will take some time to end, but by the next decade, it will become a kind of imperative that if you don't have these kinds of missiles in your system, you would actually be a laggard. And
Yes.
that India cannot afford to be.
Right.
That's what
Absolutely.
I want to say.
And Air Marshal Srivastava, I want to quickly ask you this: the fact that what are the next steps now, literally after the test firing of this missile? What would be the services contribution to this? So far, it's been an DRDO R&D project. It's a breakthrough achievement to test fire a hypersonic missile. Now, where do the services come in? At what point do they enter the picture?
I would just say that it's not only the DRDO's achievement. I mean, I will not like to anyway steal away the credit they have, but the users are involved right from the beginning.
Right.
And targeted user is Indian Air Force. They're involved
Yes.
in it. Armed forces are involved in it.
Yes.
Because when the specifications take place, they play a great part. And that is one thing. And I'm telling you this because I was a user and I was also a production person for this
Yes.
while in
Yes.
this thing.
Absolutely.
And also I had the chance to be with L&T,
Yes.
where the hypersonic, the structure, the aerostructure was built
Right.
or manufactured. So I would say this is a happy moment for a person like me,
Yes.
that the all elements, all parts of the game have been synthesized and is a product of everybody's contribution.
Right. It's a product of
Remember, we
everybody's
cannot really
contribution. Yes.
grow. We cannot grow as a country, or we can't assert our power unless our public sector, private sector, our armed forces, our R&D organization like DRDO, they
Yes.
play a synthesized and a very cohesive role to achieve anything.
Right.
This is a result of that, and it's a very happy result of that.
It's a very
The
happy
next
result
natural
indeed.
question.
Yes.
Okay,
The
okay.
next
Yeah.
question goes to Rahul Chaudhary, who's listening very patiently. Air Marshal Srivastava, I'm going to come to you also because I'm fully aware of the role that you've played in India's military-industrial complex. I'll come to that a little later, but I want to first ask Rahul Chaudhary this. Rahul, test firings are amazing. Proof of capabilities, proof of concepts, all of those, right? But do you believe that, in India, we get taken in by a lot of these, the hype around the test firings, and we don't talk enough about the real business of actually productionizing these prototypes, where you actually have to set up an entire military industrial complex to mass produce these missiles, because till the time these missiles are not mass produced, they don't mean anything for the services. The services would be just, is that the word? Is there a word like sleeping partners in the project, or active sleeping partners in this thing? But till the time the missiles don't reach the services, the inventory of our Air Force, the Army, and of course the Navy, they're meaningless for national defense. Take us through the next steps now. After the test firing, the proof of concept is established, what next? What are the big challenges that we really face in productionizing these missiles?
You are at TRL levels, that is realization of a technology and productionization. You are at a TRL level of 6 or 7, which is the capability metric.
Right.
Here on design to manufacturing and the manufacturing processes and the processes of scaling up.
Yes.
Take on. Now, that in itself is a very different capability than doing prototyping, because
Right.
Just to give you an example, I mean, I happen to be a telecom guy.
Yes.
And good old days, we all used to have EPBXs and digital exchanges. I mean, we are now. There were thousands of vendors, in fact, millions of vendors for a 10 to 15 line EPBXs in the world.
Yes.
The moment you started to go around 500 lines, the number of manufacturers came down to in hundreds.
Right.
When you are talking about a 10,000 line digital exchange, in the world there are 4 or 5 players.
Right.
So this is the challenge of the complexity of numbers.
Right.
And it grows at the 2 to the power n. And if you do not have the wherewithal to understand and have the production processes to get that going, we don't see end results coming through. Let's talk about some of the great work DRDO has done, starting from Kalam's IGM-DP.
Yes.
And the systems which got productionized and the systems which did not see the light of the day.
Right.
You would find that systems which got finally productionized had a very serious system integrator level private sector partner involved with it.
Yes.
I mean, you cannot understand the importance of this whole damn thing. In this country, we talk about our software capabilities and CMMI level 5, level 6, and level 5 and everything else.
Right.
But please remember The MMI is a standard which was developed by US Department of Defense along with one of the universities. And it's a system integration process.
Right.
That is what is completely lacking in this country. We do not have that process and that process focus, and therefore we have some fantastic technology demonstrators.
Right.
And from taking the technology demonstrators to production,
Yes.
I mean, AVM Srivastava is sitting there, and he was in BDL, and I was in Tata Power SED at
Yes.
that point in time. And the first large-scale productionization in this country, which happened,
Right.
was Akash missile systems.
Absolutely.
And there was a supply chain of about 4,000 vendors which got created. Now that, if you do not nurture that entire piece,
Yes.
and you do not have the software piece to bring all of these technologies and capabilities together,
Right.
to do the manufacturing part of it,
Yes.
you will not succeed.
Absolutely. Well said, Rahul. You know, in fact, I'm just reading through this report prepared by Lakshman Behra, who's a defense expert, who we read very closely. One of his recent reports says that, evaluating the Indian defense industry, he says that though the Indian defense industry is at a much better footing now, it faces several challenges. And he says the foremost challenge the Indian MIC faces, the military industrial complex faces, is increasing production, at least to a level that meets India's procurement requirements. Now, AVM Srivastava, your experience at BDL mass producing the Akash missile, as Rahul was just mentioning, what are the big challenges that you faced over there? And what are the challenges that you foresee in making more complex missiles like this, like for instance the hypersonic missile or even the land attack cruise missile, these two breakthroughs that we've seen in recent days?
Yeah, Rahul has given an absolutely correct picture. I mean, getting something done, I always used to call that you can make a boutique shirt because
Yes.
everyone is involved, and that comes out one or two in numbers. But when you want to mass manufacture, you need to now get your process systems absolutely accurate.
Right.
And when we talk of process, let's start with the design. You get the design
Right.
documents, then they have to be converted into manufacturing documents.
Yes.
The moment you convert design documents into manufacturing documents, you find so many kinds of impediments.
Yes.
The impediments they rightly start from the material itself, the kind of tooling you have, the kind of precision you can bring in,
Right.
and the kind of process you bring into the system as to how do you measure and say good or bad. Because the production line can run only if the whole job is divided into very small parts, and those small parts people can be trained, a process can be there, a check matrix can be created, and a test equipment is there which can measure yes or no.
Yes.
So these kinds of things, when you want to convert that into it, then the process becomes complex.
Right.
But
Right.
fortunately, since I'm a man who's perennially optimistic, fortunately, we have now an experiment which has gone into, and Akash was mass produced later
Yes.
on. As we struggled the first year when me and Rahul were there,
Right.
but since we set up the system,
Yes.
system started delivering. So there is some experience in the environment of those 4,000 people.
Right.
That yes, how missile parts are manufactured, they are flown through the logistic channel,
Yes.
and they arrive at a place where they're synthesized.
Right.
But yes, if you ask me, are there any deficiencies? The deficiencies galore. We'll have to learn further. We'll have to improve our learning curve and do it. The major challenges are management of supply chain.
Yes.
There's one big problem. When you make your boutique, the technology demonstrator, you're giving very small numbers.
Right.
You're holding the hand of the manufacturers or those people who are involved in the initial system.
Yes.
You're getting small amounts of material, and that material comes, all the scientists are involved, and it gets produced, and there is a demonstrator created.
I'm going to come to
But
that,
when you
AVM
want,
Srivastava. Yes, that point that you raised on mass production, I'm going to ask Rahul that. But before that, I want to bring in my colleague Deepak Bhadana, who's in the studio here with me. Deepak, where have we heard this? The very interesting coinage that the Air Vice Marshal put about the boutique system, where it's really easy to design something because all of the all the stakeholders are involved in that project, and they really make it work. Where have you heard this before? In gun design?
Oh yeah, for sure. And in fact, so gun design.
Small arms. I'm
Small
talking
arms,
of
small
assault
arms.
rifles.
Assault rifles. But I'd like to take this argument even further. I mean, this whole, it's a cyclical problem really.
Right.
There needs to be a lot of demand for it.
Yes.
There needs to be a lot of finances for that.
Yes.
And only that will help, the industry come up with a large supply
Basically
chain.
the numbers.
Yeah,
and what
the
we saw
numbers.
with the INSAS also, Deepak, is that fact that the design was really good, but when it went into large-scale production, that's when the challenges really started coming in. The quality control issues, the supply chain, as our panelists were telling us. And Rahul, this problem that AVM Srivastava mentioned about supply chain issues, what are the big lessons from the Akash missile mass production that you saw, which other missile systems like the LACM and the hypersonic could benefit from? What are the 5 big lessons that you learned from the Akash production?
First, establishing the quality control system.
Right.
And writing the quality documents properly.
Right.
There is a huge weakness in Indian military complex.
Yes.
Which is the AHSP system, where Indian private sector OEMs are not their own AHSPs, or people who can make changes and make the system better.
Right.
Unless and until you have that piece, at least in Akash, we had realized this issue. Coming from Pinaka, we had realized this issue, and therefore, lot of basic preparation was done in terms of making sure that the documentation was written in a way that the required deviations, etc., could easily be managed.
Right.
But this is not the right way to do things. You need to have a very clear process. The person who is the OEM who is making something needs to know, and he knows that once he's converting a prototype into the final assembly line, there
Yes.
are things which needed to be changed. You cannot say that this was test fire and therefore it cannot change.
Right.
So
it needs to be a dynamic process.
Our scaling up problem lies.
Yes.
We need to get our systems right. And also, OEMs are not allowed to do their own quality. Somebody else will come and do quality. I mean, this is nowhere in the world can this happen.
Right. Of course. What are the other big lessons, Rahul? One is, of course, we get it that quality control is the biggest lesson.
The second is the continuation of orders.
Yes.
I mean, a supply chain cannot be created in vacuum.
Right. Right.
If you have a start and stop kind of an arrangement.
Yes.
I mean, it just will not work.
Absolutely.
Because once a production line thing has been created,
Yes.
continuous improvements are required in the production, and for that, continuous orders are required.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask AVM Srivastava this. The fact that, this is the bugbear of the entire Indian military-industrial complex, whether it's the private sector or the public sector. The national MIC suffers from this problem, the lack of orders, AVM Srivastava. The fact that you tend to order systems in boutique numbers. 5s and 10s and a dozen or so, whereas rest of the world we see them being ordered in very large quantities, and those orders are then broken up into Mach 1, version 2, version 3, spread over a couple of years. What is the problem really here? Why are we unable to order them in large numbers that would allow for the production to stabilize and therefore to create an MIC, an indigenous MIC?
So I have written extensively about this after my experience, and it came out in ET also long back. The basic my understanding of the whole thing is, which I'm still convinced that that's a good way of handling it. There are 2 issues. One is that we are not able to place order, and that's the constraint on the system also.
Right.
That means the DRDO cannot order really the large quantities.
Yes.
Because all of them don't get for mass production, all of them don't qualify. These are all technology efforts.
Right.
But the ones which qualify, there's a huge time gap before the orders are placed because the kind of ordering mechanism we have.
Yes.
And then what happens are people who are part of the technology demonstration project, their production lines get all, kind of obsolete, and they are no
Yes.
more producing anything. The skill, manpower, gets dispersed. So that's a major challenge. So what I said, and there's another challenge, policy challenge. The policy challenge is that first round order will go to the people who help in producing the missile or making it operational. Let's take the case of Akash. There are some people who are, attached, including Rahul's team, with this project right from the inception, and that was about 2 decades plus long journey.
Right.
And when the orders came in, the first order normally will be a smaller quantity. When the big order came in, they had to compete with the newbies who were handed out the design, established design prescriptions directly. So normally there's a tendency with the MIC, the industrial complex, which is in the commercial zone, that you wait for the product to become, operational, and let the orders be there. Then we'll quickly set up the whole thing, because then you get all the information, you have all the knowledge.
Yes.
So what is the way out? The way out is, we normally have IPR is the only way out which can really protect their interests.
Right.
But the IPR, the R&D is involved, R&D is from DRDO. So they say IPR is ours,
Yes.
which is true. But if we can subdivide the IPR into 2 parts, one we call technology IPR.
Yes.
This is a new phrase. It is not there in the book of IPR. And second we call production IPR. If that is there, then you'll find a lot of people who have venture capitalist or kind of appetite,
Yes.
entrepreneurship. They will jump in to do, because they know now IPR, I'll hold the IPR. And if this missile becomes successful, I'll be there always. And you can always predict that the way we are on the trajectory we are going, it'll be needed in so many numbers, because
Right.
that is known to a lot of people who are in this environment. And also they know it can be exported, because it will be cheaper than others in the similar class of missiles.
Yes.
So if we established a policy in which we can say, that's what I want to communicate through your channel,
Yes.
that we divide IPR for our own sake in the military industrial complex. One we call technology IPR, that definitely remains with the R&D, that is DRDO and all that. But production IPR, if that is passed on to the private sector or the people who are really producing it in the
Yes.
first day at the time of, when the whole thing is coming up, that will give a great fillip to the whole thing just by one division. And it will also empower them, what Rahul was talking, to innovate. Because if I have the IPR, I can innovate on it.
Yes.
I'm the only one who knows about it. And I'll have the production drawings with me. I know how much to wait, how to wait, and that can be discussed in the boardroom.
Right.
So at least the large companies will be able to keep their supply chain alive.
Absolutely.
They know this will come. This is not coming today, but
Yes.
sometime later it will come. So that kind of mechanism we don't have.
Right.
We need to establish, apart from the quality he mentioned about, that will all also get resolved if this kind of manifest or this kind of policy direction comes through. But it's a major policy thing.
Yes.
How the government will react, how it will interact with the system. But I firmly believe if we split the IPR in 2 parts,
Yes,
technology
absolutely.
and production, we can solve the problem to a large
Absolutely.
extent.
Thank you very much, AVM Srivastava. I mean, very interesting thoughts there, and I do hope that all of your recommendations find their way to the Defense Ministry and they can actually take this mission missiles forward. But thanks again for joining us this evening as we're talking about India's breakthrough in missile technology, particularly with those very significant tests of the hypersonic missile and the land attack cruise missile. You just heard it from the top men in India's military industrial complex on the way ahead, what we really need to do to make that leap from test firing these missiles to actually productionizing them and getting them into the hands of our armed forces. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. Earlier, I spoke with Lieutenant General P. Ravishankar, former DG Artillery, and asked him about the hypersonic missile launch and his journey from the test firing to the production line. Let's listen.
Yeah, have a look at this, right? You see, this is a normal ballistic trajectory which goes out into atmosphere and then gets back. This is like a normal ballistic missile. As against this, you have the cruise missile, which is a hypersonic glide vehicle, a hypersonic missile with a glide vehicle. It goes, like I said, it releases the glide vehicle and it glides on to the target the way it wants, right? The way you program it and you control it from the satellite. Otherwise, you can fire it in the form of a cruise missile. The cruise missile can go much lower, like any other missile, like the Brahmos.